There's a strange belief in the world that if you hurt someone quietly enough, if you leave no visible scar, then maybe it doesn't count. That if you walk away fast enough, far enough, you can outrun. But reality doesn't work that way. The universe is not blind, and the soul is not silent. You see, the pain they caused, the betrayal, the abandonment, the deception, it didn't just vanish when they turned their back. It became a ripple, and ripples return. Not always in the way we expect, but always in the way they deserve. Some people carry their destruction like a badge. Others bury it so deep they almost forget. But the mind remembers, the body remembers. And when the nights are quiet and the distractions fade, the curse begins to speak. This isn't about revenge. It's not about bitterness. It's about a truth we try desperately to ignore. You cannot break the soul of another without fracturing your own. And so, while they may appear untouched, while they may even seem to flourish, beneath it all, something follows them. The pain they caused does not die. It waits, and it always finds a way back home. Moral injury echoes in the soul. There's a kind of damage that doesn't bleed, a wound that doesn't leave bruises. It's not physical, it's deeper. When someone inflicts pain on another person, not by accident, but by choice, something in the fabric of their own psyche tears. We don't like to talk about it because it's easier to pretend that harm is a one-way street, that only the person who suffers shows the signs. But that's not how human nature works. Every time someone chooses to lie, to betray, to humiliate, to abandon, they're not just reshaping someone else's reality, they're reshaping their own. You see, morality isn't just a set of rules handed down from some abstract authority. It's embedded in the structure of our being. There's a psychological architecture to right and wrong. And when you violate that structure, when you cross those internal lines, something shifts inside you, subtly at first. A little voice, a flicker of guilt, a hesitation that wasn't there before. But over time, it grows. We all carry a moral compass, and whether we admit it or not, it doesn't break quietly. It cracks like ice beneath the surface, slowly, unforgivingly, and long after the person who was hurt has learned to breathe again, the one who caused the pain often begins to suffocate, not from punishment imposed by the world, but from the consequences they created within themselves. This is called moral injury. And it's not abstract philosophy, it's real psychology. People who harm others often suffer themselves eventually, not because anyone makes them, but because the human mind wasn't built to carry unacknowledged cruelty forever. It shows up in self-sabotage, in sudden bursts of anger, in relationships that fall apart for no clear reason. It leaks out in the form of anxiety, depression, emotional numbness. The soul keeps score even when the ego denies it. And here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Sometimes the person who hurt you will go on to appear successful. They'll smile for photos. They'll post their highlight reels. But inside, deep inside, there's a haunting, a sense that something they once had, some clarity, some peace, is missing, lost, replaced by a restlessness they can't explain. Because when you violate another person at a deep level, you don't just injure them, you corrupt something sacred inside yourself. And no matter how far you run, no matter how much you try to justify it, that kind of pain it waits and it echoes. The human conscience is not easily silenced. There's a part of us that knows. It knows when we've crossed a line. It knows when we've twisted the truth to serve ourselves. It knows when we've turned our back on someone who trusted us, not because we had to, because we could. That part, it's the conscience, and it doesn't sleep. You can lie to others, you can even lie to yourself for a while, but the deeper mind, the one that watches from the shadows, it doesn't forget. It keeps records, it keeps score, and eventually it speaks. Not in words, usually. It speaks in discomfort, in restlessness, in that strange sense that something feels off, even when everything on the surface looks fine. It speaks in the middle of the night, when the distractions are gone and you're left alone with your thoughts. That's when it creeps in. A flash of a memory, a face you haven't seen in years, a question you don't want to answer. What did I become when I did that? We live in a world that celebrates avoidance. We're told to move on, to forget the past, to keep pushing forward. And that sounds nice until you realize the parts of you that haven't been made right don't vanish. They follow. They seep into the way you treat people, into the way you trust, into how deeply you're willing to feel. You can bury the guilt, but buried things don't die. They ferment. They grow in the dark. People think conscience is just some religious leftover, a superstition, but it's not. It's psychological reality. There are entire fields of therapy built around helping people face the parts of themselves they've tried to ignore. Because when you silence your conscience, you don't find peace. You find confusion. You lose your center. You start chasing things to make the noise stop. Validation, pleasure, power. But none of them work. Not for long. The mind isn't just an instrument of logic, it's also a mirror of morality. And when you've done something that breaks the natural order, when you've wounded someone who didn't deserve it, when you've used your strength to exploit rather than protect, the mind doesn't just move on, it stores it, and it sends out warnings. That's why some people seem like they're running from something invisible. They keep changing careers. They can't stay in one relationship. They jump from one obsession to the next because something in them is unsettled, haunted, but they won't slow down long enough to face it, because facing it means owning what they did. And that kind of ownership is terrifying. But here's the paradox. The only way to quiet the conscience is not to run from it, but to listen, to turn around and ask, what is it trying to tell me? And that question, that's where redemption begins. Because when you ignore your conscience, you become hollow. But when you face it, honestly, painfully, you begin to rebuild the bridge back to yourself. That's where real healing starts. That's where peace is found. But for those who refuse, who keep pretending, who keep running, the conscience doesn't go away. It waits, and it whispers in their silence until one day the noise inside becomes louder than the world outside, the illusion of getting away with it. Some people walk away from the wreckage they caused like nothing happened. No apology, no recognition, just silence. Like a crime scene where the fingerprints have been wiped clean. And from the outside, it can look like they've gotten away with it. They smile, they thrive, they build new relationships, they post perfect photos. And you wonder, do they even care? Did it mean nothing to them? But what you're witnessing isn't peace. It's a performance. Because the idea that someone can cause deep harm and walk away untouched is a lie, a dangerous, seductive illusion, one that fools both the one who is hurt and the one who did the hurting. You see, when you do something that violates the integrity of your own soul, Even if the world never finds out, the consequences don't just evaporate, they begin within, quietly, slowly, but relentlessly. It starts with little things: an inability to enjoy silence, a sudden wave of anxiety that has no name, a tension in the body that never quite goes away. The mind knows something is off, but the person doesn't know why. Or worse, they know exactly why, and they're too afraid to say it out loud. This is how the illusion works. The person convinces themselves it wasn't that bad, that they had their reasons, that the other person deserved it, that it's in the past. They tell themselves these things because they have to. Because to face the truth would be to face the kind of shame that cracks your foundation, and most people aren't strong enough to do that. But time has a way of catching up, because when you cause someone else to break, when you diminish them, gaslight them, betray their trust, you don't just damage them, you plant a seed inside yourself, a seed of decay, and that seed doesn't need sunlight to grow. It grows in denial. It feeds on repression. It expands every time you pretend you're fine. Years can pass, and maybe everything looks successful, but slowly things begin to unravel. Relationships fall apart. Joy becomes harder to access. There's a growing sense of emptiness that success can't fill. The person becomes reactive, defensive, paranoid, and they don't know why. Or maybe deep down they do, but they can't face it. Because here's the truth: the human soul is not a machine. It's not built to carry unresolved harm without cost. You cannot violate your own moral structure and remain whole. You fracture, even if the cracks are invisible. There's a cost to causing pain, even when no one sees the bill. And while it may look like they've gotten away with it, there's a haunting that begins, a quiet unraveling, a loss of integrity, a weight that no achievement can lift. And here's the most tragic part: many of them don't even realize it's connected. They never trace the anxiety, the numbness, the chaos in their lives back to the moment they wounded someone and never made it right. They blame everything else: bad luck, difficult people, stress, but never the part of themselves they abandoned when they walked away. So no, they didn't get away with it. They just delayed the collapse. But the pain they caused, it doesn't vanish. It transforms. And it returns, often when they least expect it, because time doesn't forget what the soul remembers. And the illusion of escape always fades when the mirror becomes too honest to ignore. Healing doesn't cancel justice. We often hear phrases like "let it go," "move on," "forgive and forget." They sound noble, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're a disguise for injustice, a way of pretending that healing in one person automatically means closure for another. But healing is not the same as justice, and one never cancels the need for the other. You see, some people sleep easier at night simply because the person they hurt managed to rise. They think, well, they're doing better now, they're stronger, they're successful, so I guess everything's fine. But that's not how moral reality works. Just because the wound no longer bleeds doesn't mean it was never inflicted. And just because someone found the strength to rebuild themselves from the ashes doesn't mean the fire never happened. People confuse recovery in the victim with redemption for the one who caused the harm, but those two roads do not intersect by default. One person healing is a testament to their resilience, not a pardon for the one who broke them. There are people walking around today who believe they've been absolved of what they did simply because their absence no longer breaks the person they left behind. But what they don't realize is that growth is not a receipt for forgiveness. It's not proof that what happened didn't matter. It's proof that someone refused to stay broken forever. And the tragedy? Some people will take your healing as permission to never change. They'll say, look, they're fine now, as if that was the point, as if their freedom from guilt is the natural reward for someone else's hard-won recovery. But healing is a personal victory. It belongs to the one who suffered. It's forged in pain, in silence, in nights spent wondering why. It's earned, not granted. And it doesn't erase the past. It simply refuses to be defined by it. You see, true justice is not about revenge. It's not about making someone suffer. It's about accountability. It's about recognition. It's about standing face to face with the damage you've done and refusing to look away. And until that moment happens, the conscience will remain unsettled. This is why so many people carry a low-grade anxiety they can't explain, a quiet shame they dress up with pride or sarcasm, because somewhere inside them they know they never made it right. And even if the other person moved on, even if life looks okay, the story is still open. The weight is still there. So no, healing does not cancel justice. It doesn't remove the need for repentance. If anything, it shines a brighter light on it. Because now, in the clarity of hindsight, the choice to repair what was broken becomes even more important and even more possible. But many people won't take that road because facing your past requires courage. And courage isn't about appearing strong. It's about being honest with yourself, with others, with what you did. And if you won't do that, if you keep telling yourself that everything's fine just because the people you hurt stopped screaming, then you haven't escaped anything. You're just delaying the reckoning. Because justice, true justice, has nothing to do with who won. It has to do with truth. And until that truth is faced, until the pain is acknowledged, until the debt is seen, the conscience will continue to whisper. And what was once a quiet reminder will grow into a curse of your own making. Every act shapes the soul of the actor. There's a truth we all try to outrun at some point. Every decision you make, every action you take, leaves a mark, not just on others, but on you. You are not separate from what you do, you become it. Over time, your choices don't just shape your life, they sculpt your identity. They become the story your soul tells when no one's looking. We like to believe that we can compartmentalize, that what we do in one moment doesn't define us, that a betrayal was just a phase, a lie was just a survival tactic, a manipulation was just a means to an end. But it doesn't work that way, because every time you choose to harm someone, you carve away a piece of who you might have been, and eventually, what's left is not an accident, it's the result of accumulated choices. You become the kind of person who can walk away without apology. You become the kind of person who looks away instead of making things right. You become someone who must constantly numb the discomfort because somewhere deep down, you know, this isn't who I was meant to be. The pain you caused becomes a mirror you can't bear to look into. So you avoid it. You fill your life with noise, distractions, achievements, temporary highs. You tell yourself you're fine, that the past is dead. But the truth is, it's not dead, it's buried. And buried things don't disappear. They wait. They rot. And they surface when you least expect it. That's the curse, not some mystical punishment, not some cosmic wrath. The real curse is living every day as someone you no longer respect, someone you don't trust, someone who had the chance to be whole but chose something easier, something colder, something smaller. And here's the most brutal part of it all. No one sees this decay from the outside. You can fool the world for years, decades even, but you can't fool yourself forever. Eventually, the cracks show in your relationships, in your work, in your spirit. There's a kind of hollowness that no success can fill, a kind of tension that no vacation can release, a kind of restlessness that no applause can quiet. Because the soul knows what you did. And worse, it knows what you refuse to undo. But all is not lost, because the very same truth that condemns can also redeem. Just as every act of harm shapes the soul, so does every act of courage, every moment of ownership, every attempt to make things right. Yes, the pain you caused may follow you, but you don't have to run forever. You can stop, you can turn around, you can face the wreckage and begin to rebuild. Not all relationships can be restored. Not all wounds can be undone. But restoration isn't always about fixing what was broken. Sometimes it's about becoming someone who no longer breaks others to begin with. That's how you reclaim your soul. That's how the haunting begins to fade. Not by pretending it never happened, but by refusing to let it define who you will be tomorrow. Because who you are is the sum of your choices, and it's never too late to choose differently.